This just in, your class has been buffed to sky high and it's now doing too much damage to be played in 11.2. Hello there, welcome back to Marcelian&Flame. I am Flame and we will be talking about the newly class changes on the 11.2 PTR with all of the buffs coming to some specs like Death Knight, quite a few, and to what I believe is a complete disconnect by the developers from the actual community and what their incentive is about the class reworks, which is a little bit sad, and how PTR feels absolute trash to test nowadays. And I will have a message to the devs if by any chance they would be watching this video and if they would be sticking around until the end. So stay tuned for that, and we're gonna hop right into Death Knight right away with the hero talents, specifically Deathbringer, where the Mana Forge 4 set bonus has been addressed. Exterminate deals 20% increased damage, and Reaper's Mark can stack up to 15 additional times. Upon exploding, Reaper's Mark increases your critical strike chance by 10% for 8 seconds. For Rider the Apocalypse, an issue causing the 2 set bonus to not grant the bonus damage to Undeath and Trollbane's Icy Fury has been resolved. Furthermore, for Frost, Trollbane's Icy Fury bonus from the Mana Forge 2 set bonus has been increased to 20% from the previous 10%, and Trollbane's Obliterate from the Mana Forge 4 set bonus now deals frost damage if was triggered from an Obliterate that consumed Killing Machine, and once again, Trollbane's Frost side damage bonus from the 4 set bonus has been increased by 100%. Although I will get back to this point at the end of these patch notes, I do want to say that this is strictly for Rider of the Apocalypse being giga buffed, since Deathbringer has been the only one really being used in the last forever for Frost. So this is just a very good indicator that the hero talents will be, or at least intended to be, very equal in their overall performance. So hopefully that in 11.2 you can actually play the hero talents that you want and not the ones that are dictated by the tier set. Moving on to Unholy, an issue causing Whitemane's Epidemic to benefit from the mastery twice has been resolved. In case you saw the extra damage that it did, Whitemane's Death Coil damage has been increased by 100%. Whitemane's Epidemic damage bonus from the 4 set bonus has been increased by 50%. And Whitemane's Undeath bonus from the 2 set has been increased to 20% from the previous 10%, again buffing Rider of the Apocalypse. For San'layn, the 4 set bonus for Vampiric Strike now additionally increases the ability damage of your pet ghoul and Dancing Room Weapon by 10%. Corrupted Blood ability of Blood Beast damage has been increased by 25%. Pact of the San'layn now stores 15% of the shadow damage done into Blood Beast, was 10%, so Blood Beast buffed even more. Frenzied Bloodthirst now increases the damage of Death Coil by 8% per stack of the Essence of the Blood Queen, which previously was 5%. So all of the nerfs that we saw to San'layn going into the PTR are now slightly being reversed since they weren't in tune with the new damage profile of Season 3. And now we're getting to the juicy bits. Frost Death Knight, all damage increased by 10%. On top of that, Obliterate damage increased by 30%. Empower Rune Weapon damage now scales with Mastery. Empower Rune Weapon is now correctly considered Shadow Frost for the Deathbringer hero talent tree. Consuming Killing Machine causes Frost Sight to deal 4 times the normal damage, previously was 3. Fixed an issue causing Everfrost to not increase the damage of Howling Blast on secondary targets. And fixed an issue causing Frozen Dominion to generate multiple stacks of Mastery buff from the same target. So overall, Frost DK getting giga buffs, and that's not all. Moving to Unholy. The Mastery Dreadblade has an additional effect. Increases the critical strike damage of your minions and diseases by 20%, scaling at a reduced amount. Menacing Magus now causes Magus of the Dead Shadow Bolt to fire up to 8 nearby enemies. It's a good change. Epidemic damage increased by 30%. Death Coil damage increased by 35%. This is probably to address the fact that sometimes runic power became a little bit less of a priority, so you would overcap runic power in favor of spending your globals on doing damage with, I would imagine, Scourge Strike or spreading more wounds. Festering Wound burst damage has been increased by 25%. Commander of the Dead now increases the damage of Legion of Souls. Unholy Aura now also increases the damage enemies take from Legion of Souls. Harbinger of Doom now causes Sudden Doom to increase the damage of your next Death Coil by 40%, previously was 20, or Epidemic by 20%, previously was 10. Fixed an issue causing Desecrate to not function on Dawnbreaker ships. Fixed an issue causing Commander of the Death to not activate. There are a couple of issues with Unholy. First of all, the fact that wounds have been buffed, which I will be addressing at the end of this video, so stay tuned for that if you want to know our opinion here at Marcelian&Flame. Moving on to Demon Hunter, Eldrachi Reaver has been addressed, the 2 set at the very least, now increases Reaver's Glaive damage by 50%, previously was 60, and other physical damage by 25, previously was 30. So nerfs. Demon Hunters are actually doing quite a little bit of damage, specifically Havoc. For Fellscarred, the 2 set bonus now increases Chaos Strike damage by 20% while Immolation Aura is active, previously was 30%. Moving on to Druid, for Elune's Chosen, the 2 set bonus Star Surges cast by this set bonus no longer trigger Lunation's cooldown reduction effect. With a developer note, this interaction was unintended and added more power to the set than desired, so basically just tier set tuning. For Wildstalker, particularly for Feral, the 4 set bonus makes each stack of Bloodseeker Vines on an enemy increase the bursting growth damage taken by 40%, up from 30%. Feral has kind of been a little bit underperforming on the PTR as far as we've been able to see, so this is great for now. For the Chrono Warden hero talents, the 4 set bonus now increases Chrono Flame's effect by 15%, up from the previous 10, and the damage healing cap increased to 450% of spell power, up from the previous of 400%. So this is what, like a 12% increase? Temporal Burst with the Mana Forge Omega 4 set bonus increases the number of Chrono Flame targets by 2, previously was 1, and fixed an issue where After Image would not be affected by the Mana Forge 4 set bonus. For the Flame Shaper, the 2 set bonus Inner Flame increases periodic healing and damage by 25% per stack, previously was 40%, so a little nerf here. Inner Flame now plays a fiery visual on the Evoker while it is active. I think this is a typo. Fix the timing issue where Consume Flame would not calculate the bonus from Inner Flame before dealing its damage or healing. This is a little bit under the hood. Essence Bomb now triggers twice if the Evoker has 2 stacks of Inner Flame. And Scale Commander, an issue has been fixed with the 4 set bonus would not dynamically update Mass Disintegrate or Mass Eruption when applied and removed. For Hunter, we have Beast Mastery changes, fixed an issue with Hunt Master's Call that was causing Hati and Fenrir attacks to have higher than usual variance. And Hati and Fenrir's base damage was increased to about twice of a normal Dire Beast's damage. Mage, for Frostfire, the 2 set bonus now increases Meteor, Comet Storm, and Frostfire burst damage by 30%, while Frostfire Bolt damage remains unchanged. For Spellslinger, for Arcane First, the 2 set bonus Arcane Blast now additionally grants 2 stacks of Arcane Harmony. Wow. And for Frost, Iceland now additionally has a 100% chance to grant 1 stack of Cold Front. Cold Front Splinter proc chance reduced to 20%. And for Sun Fury, the 2 set bonus now increases Spellfire spell damage bonus by 1%, previously was 2%. This was buffed last week, nerfed again this week, so they're kind of like playing ping pong with the amount of spell power you get from the spheres. For Monk, maybe this is the most impactful change that we have seen this week as well. Mystic Touch now increases physical damage taken by 8%, up from 5%. This is essentially the raid buff that Monks provided, something that we haven't seen in like forever, since all of the raid buffs have been systematically nerfed since, I don't know, Shadowlands, whenever they've been added. This is the only one that I know that has been buffed at the moment, probably since we've seen a resurgence of physical composition groups, particularly in Mythic Plus in Season 2, but still they fell behind, and for 5 years now they have finally listened that there's more specs out there that deal magical damage as opposed to pure physical damage, so they're addressing that discrepancy between specs that accomplish that by increasing this amount by 8%. That still doesn't change the fact that if a physical damage spec like Outlaw Rogue is top tier, this will make it even more top tier, so I don't know if it will remain this way, but at least they are aware that predominantly WoW's DPSers do more magic damage than physical damage, which I guess that would still be weird. Paladin for Lightsmith, the 2 set bonus. When Hammer and Anvil is activated by Crusader Strike, Blessed Hammer, or Hammer of Righteous, it will instead be cast at 75% effectiveness, previously 100%. And the 4 set bonus, if a stack of Masterwork is gained while at maximum stacks, a lesser armament will be cast on a nearby ally. And for Holy specifically, the 4 set bonus makes lesser weapons should now prioritize healers when possible. Moving on to Shaman, for the Stormbringer Elemental, the 2 set bonus now grants Ascendance after gaining 9 stacks of Awakening Storms, previously was 6, and for Enhancement now grants 6 seconds of Ascendance, previously was 8. We've been seeing nerfs to Shaman probably every week right now, but Shamans are just doing like crazy amounts of damage. I don't know if this is the end of the world, but once again, as long as they have their data right and they're balancing the tier sets amongst each other, then that should be fine. Warrior. For Colossus, the 4 set bonus Demolish increases the critical strike chance of your next 1, previously was 2, mortal strikes or shield slams by 100%. While for Mountain Thane, the 2 set bonus Ionizing strike damage is increased by 725%. 725%. I'll let that sink in for a second. While the forced bonus increases damaging of ionizing strike by 100%, previously was 50%. This is such a big number that just begs the question, where was their pendulum swinging when they decided what damage Mountain Thane was supposed to be, considering that Mountain Thane, I don't think it has been played almost at all for Protection Warrior at least, and for Fury was kind of the only way to play Mythic Plus previously, but the tier set has been significantly weaker for Mountain Thane, period. For Slayer, the 2-set bonus makes execute damage increase by 10%, previously was 20%. And for Protection Warrior, Spellbreaker has been updated, now has an 8% chance to affect the magic damage event, but reduces the damage taken by 50%. Overall, in the grand scheme of things, this provides the same amount of magic damage reduction, it just is weaker and it happens more often, which is probably good for their intent design of Spellbreaker, for which they have an actual developer note, and this is where we're getting to the issues of PTR. I will read the developer notes just to give the devil its due. We hear your concerns about losing spellblock as a defensive tool. It is super important to us that warriors have sufficient tools to survive magic tank busters in raids and in high keys. We are coordinating to review magic attacks in light of spellblock's removal to ensure that they're fair, including specific abilities you've raised concerns with here and in other channels. Feedback about your experience with specific magic attacks will continue to be very valuable. Thank you. Regarding the power level of Spellbreaker and Hunker Down, Spellbreaker being the one that they've just buffed, they are not intended to be replacement at the same power level as Spellblock, which is weird because they are in the place of Spellblock, and Spellblock was a reason why Prot Warrior was able to compete with other tanks in high-end Mythic Plus keys. I'm not so sure about raiding. Raiding doesn't usually provide that much dangers to tanks in general as opposed to high Mythic Plus keys. So their focus on addressing Spellblock being a tank buster in raids, although that was probably a good tool to have, not sure if that was the real problem. We'll get to that in a second. When Spellblock worked on an attack, it was an extremely powerful mitigation, and we feel that that would be too strong an effect that works on all magic damage. The Hunker Down Spellbreaker nodes offer a choice between on-demand magic damage reduction or passive average value damage reduction. And again, we will continue to work to ensure that the tools you have are strong enough to survive magic damage attacks in difficult encounters. While this all sounds very well in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really match the encounter design that we normally have within a patch scope, whether it is a dungeon or a raid sometimes. And this is coming from a Prot Warrior kind of main. I've pushed Prot Warrior to 3100 IO this season, so I'm not the best out there, but I think I might know a little bit of what I'm talking about. This is not what the problem with removing Spellblock was, that is being addressed in this particular talent point, which kind of goes a little bit against what the community has been feedback and goes into our issue with PTR that is more than this, backed up by the Unholy Death Knight rework that has been criticized for a couple of points, two main points that are relevant to this particular development notes that we've had this week. One of which being the doubling down on Festering Wounds damage, which is something that Unholy players over in the Azeroth that at least have feedback Unholy have been asking to be removed. They don't think wounds are a particularly fun mechanic, yet every week we're seeing buffs and more buffs to wounds, pointing out that the devs want wounds to be in, despite the feedback that they asked for, pointing in the opposite direction. Another more abstract feedback was about Legion of Souls being the replacement of Abomination Limb, something that pretty much all the DKs are against. They're more doubling down on Legion of Souls, dealing even more damage. And another issue with this is that it replaces a button on your bars, more dumbing down Unholy as a spec, something that I have heard people, and myself included, criticize ever since Dragonflight going into the War Within, where Unholy was simpler, going into Season 2, where it became even simpler, and now, would you believe it, going into Season 3, where it's even simpler than it was before, something that I haven't heard main Unholy Death Knights warrant or ask for. I'm sure there are people out there that appreciate a spec being a little bit simpler, and this is the direction of WoW nowadays, but you have to be very careful of how simplistic you design the specs, because a lot of red mains don't like the current version of red being so simple. So now we get to the message that we have for the developers in the PTR. I don't think you're doing PTR testing right. And we've tested PTR since BFA beta. We've been part of the crowd that has been feedbacking most of the popular topics pretty much on the same vein as everybody else, where most of these have been ignored over the years. Now, we don't have the best feedback out there. I don't think we're not the smartest players or the most insightful ones out there. We try to do our best in providing the feedback that we do. And it definitely helps that we make content out of it, which is an extra incentive to play PTR, an incentive that I don't think applies to your average player base. There is no incentive to play PTR this time, and every subsequent PTR that we've had over the last 3 or 4 years has seen fewer and fewer players engaging in the actual testing, something that I have particularly had issues with in the last week, trying to actually test the buffs and the nerfs with the specs that have been addressed. And without the help of our community on our live streams, twitch.tv/Marcelian&Flame, check it out, we wouldn't have been able to test anything on the PTR because there just aren't people there that are interested in testing it. Because PTR testers feel like they're unpaid employees that are supposed to be part of the QA team for Blizzard. We are unpaid free employees that have no incentive to test it because we don't get a mount or a cosmetic or even an actual functioning patch while the patch goes live. And as the closest, most relevant example would have been the 11.1 and 11.1.5, fun enough, 11.1.7, where we've had broken events, bugs with systems, the add-on profile being forcibly shoved down our throat that ate so many of our FPSs in raids and dungeons, this being one of the buggiest patches that we've ever played. And on top of that, we're feedbacking the class reworks that the devs that you guys have been asking for, and they're just going in the totally opposite direction. Why are we here? Why are we testing PTR? What is the purpose of us doing this instead of actually playing the game that we pay for? Nobody here, I believe, is paying to test the game for you. So it's either that the feedback that we give is wrong or the feedback that we give is correct, but you think the development should go in a different direction, which is fine. The problem is that neither of these 2 points are communicated on, which is an issue that we've had expansions ago that I thought we were past, but now we see that we're going back to it where the communication that we have is either non-existing or completely off base of what we've been feedbacking. That's fine if we are wrong. If you want Prot Warrior to go in a direction that has no spell block, or Unholy DK to double down on their wounds mechanic that no DK that I have spoken to likes to play with, but just say so. At which point you can make the game that you want, and that's perfectly fair. But why are we going on the PTR to test stuff that it's not being taken into consideration? And if it is being taken into consideration, why does it take so many multiple weeks to do it? Because these weeks, what they create is just a drought on the PTR for players, because why would they go in if what they're doing and testing and feedbacking is not being addressed, at least in a timely manner where they feel like their time investment is worthwhile? There are multiple ways that you can approach this, and maybe our way isn't the best way, but right now it's very hard not to feel like unpaid employees trying to fix the game for the devs and still the patch is coming out bugged or with a design philosophy that's opposite of what the players have been feedbacking. So I don't know what's going on. I don't know what the right direction is. But as someone who has been testing PTR for the last 3 expansions, every single patch, it has been increasingly difficult to actually go in and have an incentive to do it outside of actually making content, which is something that probably 99% of the players that you should have on the PTR servers are not going to partake in. I don't like having to talk about this. I like to play World of Warcraft and doing fun content and making funny memes and stuff, so I never want to have to do this again. Here's the Prot Warrior rework that they have made so far that you can check, that we just posted a video on, and see if you agree with it. And if not, let us know in the comment section down below. I'm done for this week. See you next time.